I built an app, and it was fantastic. You would choose a location. Are you at home or are you at the office?
You read down the article, somebody pressed the bloody button too soon. That's all that actually happened here.
I was ready for tough questions. What I wasn't ready for was the board's complete lack of knowledge around AI.
Chat, GPT and Gemini and Copilot and all, it's up in people's faces.
There's going to be some extra support for scale-ups to raise. Obviously, it's a really, really difficult funding landscape at the moment. Can you take away a point? He was too try-hard by giving the actual number.
Sophie, is that it? Hi everyone, David Crawford here. We're back for a new season of the CTO Lens. For those of you who remember, in the first season, we met some fabulous technology leaders. We talked to them about their experience and their journey to becoming a CTO. We talked about some of the trials and tribulations. They shared a few vulnerabilities, and we got a really good feel ourselves and for our audience about what it takes to become a modern CTO. We had a little bit of a laugh on the way, the occasional bit of controversy, and even one of the sessions left us a little bit tearful. So in a good way, though, in a good way. But we're back and we've taken some feedback from our viewers. Thank you for everybody who subscribed, liked, followed any element of our podcast. Please keep doing that. That's really great. It means that more and more people can join in and listen to some of the conversations we're having with some of the world's best CTOs, CIOs, technology leaders. But we thought we'd change it up a little bit based on some of the feedback. So you will see I am joined by the marvelous Sophie Valentine, another London Technology Leaders regular, somebody who should be very familiar to most of you, and who's going to join me so that we have a little bit more of a balanced view, a little bit more sort of back and forth rather than me monologuing to you. And I think Sophie and I, we share some perspectives, but we have some different perspectives. So we're going to get into that a little bit and see. We'll be bringing back guests. We're going to focus on a smaller, more detailed segment of those guests' experience. And then we've got some fun and games as we go through the rest of the podcast. So stay tuned, and hopefully the CTO Lens will continue to be a brilliant podcast for you all. But first of all, I would like to officially welcome and introduce my new co-host, Sophie Valentine. How you doing, Sophie?
I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for the introduction, David. And I have to say, well, before I introduce myself, I love your monologues. So I'm hoping not to detract from them too much by being here. But yeah, no, it's fantastic to be here. Really, really delighted to be joining, what I think is a fantastic podcast series and hugely valuable, and hoping to offer a little bit of a counterpoint. For anyone who hasn't been to one of our Women in Tech events or seen me pop up in an LTN event previously, I'm a product person. So I always feel a little bit out of place, but it's so wonderful to kind of come in and wedge myself in those conversations where we start really talking about, how are we using technologies? And while I cannot code, well, we'll discuss that later. I'm really interested in all of the kind of like tech bits, but very much the product bits. So yeah, to introduce myself, I would call myself a product leader who is specialized in digital health. So I had a first career in psychology, decided research was really, really slow, and have been increasingly sucked into the technology and tech for good world. So in health, I've worked on, novel products. I've worked on optimizing a children's mental health service, more recently standing up a women's health service, and lots of things in between. I'm also a co-founder of NeuroTechX, which is, and this is a mouthful, it's the world's largest global organization for the advancement of neurotechnology. And I've been a member of the LTL crew for a few years. So I'm really, really passionate about how we can effectively use technology to sort of support us. And yeah, as you mentioned, why I'm here to keep you company a little bit, try not to interrupt the monologues, offer a bit of a counterpoint. And I think you mentioned feedback. I was asked for by name, I believe. So, we had to bring me along. That was a joke. That one was a joke. Although I haven't actually seen the feedback myself, so you never know.
Well, you're more than welcome, Sophie, and I think you will be a big counterpoint to me. I think we'll both get quite passionate about some stuff as we go through. So, watch out for the sparks flying there. But yeah, I think you bring a really good perspective, Sophie. I think let's cover the obvious first. You're a female, I'm a male. You're coming more from the product side, I'm coming more from the technology side. I think these aren't flashpoints. I think they're perspectives, and it will help us to have a more rounded conversation. So I'm really looking forward to that. But Sophie, let's get into who we are a little bit. Let's play a game that you often play in a pub, certainly with your teams or whatever, right? So that people can understand a little bit more about you and me. They might know about me from following me a little bit, but let's get to understand this. We're going to do the archetypal 2 truths and a lie, but they have to be a little bit sort of career techie truths kind of thing, right? So I'll warm you up. I'll go with my 3 things, and you have to work out which two are true and which one is a lie, okay?
Okay, let's go.
Okay. No particular order, obviously. The first one is I can't code. I'm a
Mm,
CTO. I talk about what it takes to be a CTO, CIO, but I can't actually code. I never learned to code. That's point one. The second one is that my career was going okay, and then one day I did a particularly good project, and somebody came and offered me £1 million to go and lead a team doing exactly the same thing that I'd done for them, but in another country, and I turned it down. And then my third one is that I hold a patent for a mobile content protection technology that is used in every single modern day mobile video streaming system service.
wow. Okay. I mean,
They're my three business ones.
these are three really good facts. I mean, I will say if the third one is true, drinks are on you next time around. This is really interesting. So can you not code? I'm trying to imagine the career path of a CTO who never learned to code. And I've actually worked, my best example of this, I worked with an EM who could not code, engineering manager, who was fantastic at what he did, but was always bumping up against challenges because he couldn't also be a tech lead. So I'm going to say, my guess is that you're not an excellent coder, but you can code. I think your skills come out in leadership, but I do think you know a little bit about coding.
There's like a hidden
God,
compliment in there, right? Like you can code, but you're not an
yeah.
excellent coder. I didn't say anything about whether I was good at coding. These are black and white questions, Sophie. Let's not be critiquing my abilities, you know.
You got to dig. There's a compliment. You got to dig for it.
Okay. Okay.
Think I think the
I
truth is
hear
the
you.
middle one. I think you were offered a fantastic role. And I think you maybe turned it down, one, because it was in a different country and you were happy geographically where you were. And also, I think part of it would be maybe you turned it down because if you're doing something that you've already done, I think you would find that a little bit boring. I think you would look for growth.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to say the patent is true. You have a patent. So the lie is that you can't code. The other two are true.
Okay. Cool. So I can code. I'm not very good at
Okay.
coding, right?
Okay.
So you you
Can I
you
get a
were
point
right
for
there.
that?
I can code. So that is the lie. I can code. I'm not very good at coding. And once in my career, when I hadn't coded for years, I was having a performance review with my boss, pretty senior guy, and he was sort of he wasn't very good at performance reviews. He was one of those guys, he'd rather just take you down the pub and chat to you, you know, sort of thing. But he'd been on some training course and he was like, right, I've got to give structured feedback. So he was fishing around and he sort of went, yeah, I think you could be a bit more technical, Dave. And I was like,
Mm,
all right, okay. And he was like, yeah, yeah. He said, like, you know, you could just follow the the technology a little bit more, be a bit closer to the code and to the technology, sort of thing, right? So I was like, oh my goodness, it really hit me. I grew up coding in COBOL on ICL mainframes, which you won't even know what that means, Sophie, but too young. But the bottom line is that I took this to heart, and I was like, I'm not technical enough. I've got to get back to the code. So I did an online training course in Ruby on Rails.
mm,
And I did this training course, right? And for those of you out there who are similar to me, Ruby on Rails is pretty much just COBOL through a browser, right? So it's no big deal, right? And I spent my own time and energy learning to do this. And then the next month, I turned up to sort of have my update with my boss, and he said, "How you doing?" Sort of thing. Anyway, he'd forgotten all about his training course, right? And he was back to normal mode. And I said, "Yes, I've diligently took on board your feedback, and I've gone and I've reinvigorated my coding ability by doing an online code." And he went, "What now?" And I went, you told me I needed to be more technical. And he went, yeah, no, that was just because I've been on a training course. You're fine as you are. I was like, you bastard. So that was annoying. But to come to the two truths, I did once turn down £1 million role. So when for those who've followed any of my ramblings, you'll know that I was involved with a world's first putting broadcast TV on a mobile phone. That was with BT and Virgin Mobile. This was 20 years ago, and after I'd done it, I'd led the team to doing it. It was all about the team, the joint success. I got a call from the telecommunications company in Dubai. And 20 years ago,
mm,
Dubai was just really throwing money at technology stuff. And they offered me £1 million tax-free to head up the project for a year to create their thing. That was an intense half-an-hour conversation with my wife that evening. But
mm.
our kids were of an age where They were just, going through school, learning, and it would have been troublesome. So I turned it down. I never regret it, but every now and again I think about it.
Do you know,
And
I'm happy that you turned it down because we never would have met and we wouldn't be sitting here doing this podcast
oh,
today.
bless your heart, Sophie. Bless your heart. And I do hold a patent for a mobile content protection technology that is used because I was involved in the previous one. And actually, I say I hold, I'm slightly exaggerating there. So it's a mini lie. I am named on a patent that is
Uh-huh.
owned by BT. And so I don't make any money out of it, which is why you don't see me driving around a Ferrari, Sophie. But yeah, I was one of the technology teams who came up with the concept of how content protection should work over mobile networks and stuff like that. So yeah, that's my claim to fame.
Amazing.
But there you go.
That's
That's me.
fantastic. Amazing
Right.
facts. Okay, those are great. I'm gonna see if I can stand up to them as well with my 2 truths and a lie, and I have double checked that I didn't mess up the game. 2 of them are true, and 1 of them
Okay.
is
I've got
a
to
lie.
write these down. So go
Okay,
go. I'm paying
I'll go
attention.
slowly. And this is a few years out of date. If it's true, we will find out. So I learnt to code in BBC Basic because that was the only language that my supervisor at the time, when I was at a university, was coding in. So we built everything in BBC Basic.
Okay.
Is number 1. Number 2 is I once built an app for my partner to help him work out what to have for dinner because he was so indecisive. And number
Okay.
3, this is more of an opinion piece, so I'll be interested to know if you know this one already. I think that engineering should go under a CPO rather than product going under a CTO.
If that's true, then we're finishing the
Ugh.
podcast now,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and our relationship is over, Sophie. So, what can I say? All right, so we've got BBC Basic was your first language because your supervisor didn't know anything else. Uh, Built app for your partner's dinner, and you think engineering should go under a CPO, not CTO. Okay.
Yes.
Uh, the BBC Basic sort of dates you, but you're not that old. But then if your supervisor was stuck in the Stone Age, maybe that was all they could teach you, right? So I think, and actually, the fact that you even know what BBC Basic is makes me think it probably was part of your life at some point. So I'm going to go true with that. I think you do think that the engineering team should sit under the CPO, not the CTO. Maybe we could stretch that to say CPTO, but I think
Yeah.
that you think they should be guided under the CPO. I think maybe I'm not sure about that one,
Mhm.
but I don't think you built an app to remind your partner or so your partner could choose what he wants for dinner. I think that's not true, but you probably built an app for him for something else that's just as embarrassing. That's my guess.
Okay.
So that the
Okay.
middle one is the one that's not true. That's my guess.
Okay, interesting. You're close but no cigar. So the first one is true. So I did have to learn BBC Basic, and hopefully not dating myself too much. It was very much he knows it, I need to know it.
Yeah.
Really, yeah, really, really fun learning that. We actually were working on acorns. The second one actually is true, and I didn't think it was embarrassing. So now I'm hoping my partner doesn't listen to this and go, "Gosh, how embarrassing!" But no, I built an app, and it was fantastic. You would choose a location: are you at home or are you at the office? And it would say these are the nearby restaurants, or in the office have a piece of toast. I was very proud of it. It was called Feeder with like a feed and then an R when it was cool
Yeah.
to take out vowels from names of products. So
Yeah.
that was true. And then the lie was that I don't necessarily think that engineering should go under a CPO. I do like your CPTO angle. I think it depends on what you're building and what's the skills of the team you have and all of these things. So that is my lie.
Okay. Okay. All right. So you did build an app so your partner could choose dinner because he was indecisive. Right. Okay. And yet, Sophie, you recently married your partner, didn't you? I mean,
It
you
was
know,
a good app. I had sealed the deal. Yeah.
okay, it was a good app. It passed QA, and he sounds like he passed QA, and you decided to make it formal. Well done for you. Well done. That's really good. So hopefully you got to know me and Sophie a little bit more, and we'll try and do some of those things going forward so that you keep in touch with us and what we're thinking about. Now, part of a new segment that we're going to do is we're going to talk because we're going to try and release these every week with reasonable frequency. So we're going to talk about what's going on in the tech world in the news a little bit, right? So, given that this is the first week in December, last week, one of the big things was the budget. So the budget came out. Now, there's lots of news about the budget. We're not going to start boring you with our opinions on Rachel Reeves and what she did with the budget and all that kind of stuff and what it means for families. We're going to focus in on the technology angle on this, right? So we're going to have a look and see how budget stuff last week maybe impacted the digital and technology community. So, Sophie, you got any thoughts on this? Did you come away thinking, yes, this is important? I mean, you work in a lot of startups. You know, there's funding needed there, et cetera, et cetera. Did you get excited about the budget, or were you like, nah?
I did. I got excited about some things. I mean, the thing that excited me most was how the budget was released, which I think we're going to come on to in a second. But I think there was a lot in budgets to be interested, particularly from the sort of scale up perspective. So I think it looks like there's going to be some extra support for scale ups to raise. Obviously, it's a really difficult funding landscape at the moment, and everyone's a little bit worried. And we're seeing a lot of really compelling companies struggle to raise and struggle to continue that journey. So to see that there's sort of this EMI expansion into growth stage sort of scale up organizations and an extra 5 billion into funds for those growth stage companies is really encouraging for me. Something else that caught my eye, and I'm interested in this from your perspective as someone who's kind of very senior in organizations and thinking about the kind of the team structure, is this sort of youth guarantee, jobs guarantee scheme, where we're
Yeah, the
looking
top
at
down.
these. Exactly, sort of, these guaranteed paid work placements, but for, fairly young individuals. To you, I mean, was this good news? Was this bad news? What was your thought on that particular aspect?
So I think it's good news, right? I mean, it's a little bit like as with everything, a little bit big announcements, da 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 da, and then you have to see how it actually lands and what happens as a result of it, right? I think it was really good, right? So this is, for those who don't know, go and Google it, but investment into supporting employment and skills over the next 3 years, 820 million will be invested as part of the youth guarantee, which guarantees jobs for 6-month paid work placements for 18 to 21-year-olds who've been on universal credit or been looking for a long period of time. So it's really meant to help get people who found it difficult to get into careers, right? I've always loved a willing youngster to come into a business and just soak everything up like a sponge, right? So my concern here is that these people, how are we going to prepare them for that? If they've been 18 months, they've been out of work and they've been taking universal credit and stuff like that, they might not feel like, yes, my life's starting. I'm going. So it's how we get them into that I'm keen about, because maybe we need to do some work. Maybe the technology industry needs to do some work before that, in the period of time building up to getting these youngsters into employment. But once they come in, they're just, if you've got the attitude right, you can teach them the skills, you can mold them to the culture of the company and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's really good. I'm really excited about that particular thing. I love that you picked that out.
Yeah, it's. I think it's really interesting. I think the other angle that I'm considering is what will it do to the sort of jobs landscape more broadly? So at the moment, just as the funding landscape has been terrible, and obviously they're very interconnected, the kind of the job seekers landscape has been terrible. We're hearing stories of thousands of people applying for a single role in the tech space within a day of a job being listed, and so kind of introducing these new individuals into that ecosystem. What is that going to do for your man on the street who's also looking for jobs? So I think there are definitely some tensions there, definitely some opportunities. But as you say, we'll really have to see how that pans out in practice and keep an eye on it.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you also touched on there the fact that the investments enterprise management investment scheme (EMI) is going to be allowed to have for scale ups and startups. There's also tax support for entrepreneurs. So at the moment, I'm working with one of my startups in Greedifine. We do hospitality allergen identification in hospitality management systems. We're very small. We're seeking funding. It's tough in the UK market. It's really tough. America's easier, but it's really tough for VCs and private equity and stuff like that. So I think it would be really good that the entrepreneurs can start talking to the VCs about these tax incentives and sort of say, look, come on, now's the time to jump on board. So I think that's a really good thing. The other thing, for those who know me, I'm a non-executive in the NHS. So I'm always looking out for stuff that's happening there. There's a few things they're talking about happening in the industry. One of them was like HMRC digitization. I'm like, what? Isn't HMRC already digitized? What they're going to spend 59 million in new technologies over the next 5 years to provide taxpayers with real-time digital prompts for VAT filing. I'm like, isn't that just a text
Oh,
message that tells you when you've got to file your VAT thing? We're going to spend 59 million pounds on that. So somebody needs to look at how they're doing that, right? Because 59 million sounds a lot. But the NHS is getting an additional to its current budget, 300 million of capital investment for NHS technology. And given the 10-year plan for the NHS and to turn that around, I think this investment could be really used well. So I'm personally
Yeah.
excited about that aspect of the budget that came through. Otherwise, no, there's a bit in there, and it's all like, yeah, will that happen? We're going to get gigabit connections. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. The commercial companies will do that anyway, right? Sort of thing. We don't need the government to sort that out. So,
Yeah,
but let's talk about the
exactly.
first point you mentioned, Sophie, which was actually the budget sort of leaked, right? This
Yeah.
is hilarious, right? And I'm checking out. I'm looking at the BBC News article on this, right? So the Office for Budget Responsibility has drafted in a leading cyber expert as it investigates how a document containing key details of Wednesday's budget went live to a leading. So you read down the article. Somebody pressed
Mm.
the bloody button too soon. That's all that actually happened here. And somebody said, we don't believe that it was a cyber-related incident. No, somebody pressed the button too early, you idiots. That's all that happened. There is no news here. Shit happens. It happens all the time. It's like replying all to a company email and telling them about your mum's ingrown toenail. It's mortifying, but nobody really cares, right? It's not the end of the world. What do you think? Do you think this is real news or is it like, yeah?
I think it definitely needs to be in the news. And I think if we're publishing the budget one day early, what else are we publishing, right? So I think it's definitely, to me, this really speaks to one of the key themes that we discussed at the London Tech Leaders Summit earlier this year. For anyone who's listening who came along, this may ring some bells. Was this kind of, I think we sort of sit down in 2025, 2026 and say, well, we have all of these different, AI. Oh, let's be really scared of AI, and let's be really scared of all of these kind of nefarious agents in foreign countries, and the kind of power of AI and all of this coming together. And we have all of these really malicious cyber challenges. But actually, we don't have the basics in place. We don't have the education of, hey guys, let's not, kind of press the button before we're supposed to press the button. Let's not have a URL that's guessable, right? So I think there's a fantastic lesson in here in terms of, you can bring in the kind of top tier cyber experts all you want, but actually, if you don't have the basics in place, you're still going to face these challenges. And I think, and I can't remember who it was, and probably it needs to be anonymized anyway, but there was a story that was discussed at the summit of a company. One of our panelists had been doing some work for a company, and they were pushing all of this money into kind of the most elite high tech cyber protections and, kind of using AI to be kind of proactive in detecting threats. And actually, they were doing the site visit, and the security guard had fallen asleep. And so that's no good. I mean, I worked at a company, and I'm not going to name it, where someone outside of the company got access to one of the company accounts by guessing a password that was company name 123. So I think this is absolutely a lesson for all of us that, yes, we can worry about the high tech stuff, but we do need to have the basics in place, government included.
Yeah, including analog security guards not falling asleep, right? That's
Yes, exactly. Just a little bit of coffee. It's not that expensive.
all right. So somebody should be held to account, but get your basics right first. I think that's wise words, Sophie. Okay, well, listen, we're about to move on. Now, before we do, I'm just going to give a little shout out to our producers. We've got Luke and Will in the background. Anybody who's hung around any of these podcasts before, or London Tech Leaders may know them, and they're looking after us, guiding us through this, which is absolutely great. I'm just going to give a small pause here so that they can do some magic and edit in some kind of birthday celebration type emojis flying around the screen, right? So we should just stay still for a second, Sophie, right? So they can do it.
Yeah.
Okay, right. That gives them time. Okay. Don't say we don't throw you a bone, guys, right? So here's why we're celebrating. We're celebrating because yesterday, day before, guess who was 3 years old?
Am I
Huh?
guessing?
Yeah, you're
No, the
guessing.
audience are
Who else
guessing.
am I
Oh, I'm
talking to?
guessing.
Sophie? Who are you?
Okay. Sorry, I'm expecting everyone at home listening to this podcast shouting into their phone or into their
Well, they
screen,
should
guessing
do
who it
that
was.
anyway, right?
You should do that anyway. Okay, let's give them a second. Everyone take your guess. I will take
Okay.
my guess. Was it ChatGPT?
Chat GTP, GPT, GCP, yeah, basically AI, generative AI really hit the headlines 3 years ago. Actually, it didn't. It then took a little while to roll up, sort of thing, right? Now, I don't know about you, but I'm guilty of actually going, yeah, I'm too old. I don't need to pay attention to this. This is some newfangled rubbish over here. I know that AI has been around forever, automation, data, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, robotic, blah, blah, blah. So I was a bit like, yeah, this is, I don't know, this is like TikTok or something, right?
Mm.
I don't need this in my life. I don't know. And I got it after about 9 months, I was like, "Oh, shit, okay. This is gonna become part of my responsibility. I do need to get across it." And now, like most people, I'm obsessed. I don't even know how to write anymore, Sophie, right? I just literally use ChatGTP to write everything for me now, sort of thing. I
Yeah.
don't feel like a fraud because I have to check it. That's the thing about ChatGTP. It makes mistakes all the time. And you can't just go and send it. You have to check. And I feel like that's where I'm adding my quality. So I'm definitely going for it's an efficiency gain. But of course, it spurned not just itself, but it spurned the whole concept of like, what else can we use with large language models? What else can we automate and stuff like that? So happy birthday, Chat GPT, but also the launch of the next level of thinking and maybe a bubble, Sophie. Are we in a bubble? What do you think?
Ooh. Are we in a bubble? It's a really good question. I was thinking about the bubble earlier today, actually. I think one of the stats that came out around this 3-year anniversary of ChatGPT is that Nvidia's stock has increased across this period by about 1,000%, a little bit less, which is super interesting, right? And you sort of look at this and you go, okay, well, that's a really exciting number. Is it a bubble? Is it not a
Yeah,
bubble? And you kind of you look at the numbers that sit behind it. And I think we can't know whether it's a bubble yet. I think we see the valuations of these companies that are several thousands of revenue multiples, and you go, well, okay, that's probably not very sustainable. But I think
right.
to your point, we're still working out where are the places where we can really effectively use technology. I think there's a lot of dust yet to settle. And I mean, health is a fantastic example. You and I kind of both work in the space, and we've seen a lot happening in health. I think some of the kind of key figures that come out or key stories that come out for me, you have these kind of n equals 1 stories of the health systems really let someone down, and a desperate mother has typed her child's symptoms into ChatGPT and she's completely solved it, and now the child is absolutely fine, and otherwise they would have really struggled. Okay, fantastic. But we sort of, you hear the way that clinicians are responding to, are we going to use generative AI instead of clinicians? No, we're absolutely not. To your point, they hallucinate, things go wrong. You don't want that happening within the health context where people get sick and people die. But is there an opportunity to create efficiencies? Maybe there is, because efficiencies is very much something we need within the health system at the moment. At the same time, I think I'm right in saying that there are 6 or 7 individual families who are suing OpenAI because ChatGPT has encouraged their child to commit suicide. And that's absolutely not the kind of unregulated damage that we need to be seeing. So,
Agree. Agree.
I think the bubble is yet to be kind of fully assessed. Yeah, for me, really letting the dust settle is the only way we're going to find out. But I am scared by the size of the bubble.
Yeah, scared comes with excitement a little bit, right? There are challenges. I mean, social media is a nightmare in some cases, and equally has had, really tragic horror stories associated with it, as you're suggesting, right? So I think it's one of those things. It's like I'd rather we kept going and kept talking about it and kept working away to make the technology beneficial for society, right? But there
Yeah.
is one improvement they have made in the last 3 years, which I'm very happy about. And actually, Sophie, you first pointed this out to me in one of the missives
Mm.
I wrote to you, where you
Uh-huh.
said, I can tell that you've written this using ChatGPT because of the M dash. EM dash. For those of you who don't know what the M dash is like a normal dash, but a bit longer. And you might think, why are we
Mm.
talking about normal dashes but a bit longer, right? Because it's the telltale sign that you've used ChatGPT to write your message. Yeah. And after 3 years, their 3-year update is they're taking out the M dash. My life is complete, Sophie. I'm happy. I can move merrily on my way, and all will be well. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Amazing. I'm so pleased. I think that's a really interesting one. The number of people I've seen come out and say, I was using M dashes before ChatGPT, and I do not care how much you think my birthday card to you was written using ChatGPT. I'm going to stick with it. So, but I mean, I use dashes prolifically in my writing, but I use the short dash. I actually don't know how to get an M dash out of the keyboard. So it's reverting to short dashes. And now I'm the one who's at risk of looking like I'm using ChatGPT to write everything, which
Agree.
maybe not
Agree.
everything, but a good percentage. Swings and
Agree.
roundabouts.
Agree. Agree. Yeah. Well. Let's see how many people that catches out. Okay, so that was the week of news. Thank you very much. We'll be doing that every week and having a little dip in and seeing what's going on in terms of technology news. We're just going to get into a little bit of a buzz around a post that I got a few months ago. Sophie, as you know, I like to ramble on LinkedIn every now and again and gather a few, make an opinion, gather a few opinions. Sometimes get cancelled just for a week, sort of thing. It's all good.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Um,
Then back
and
again.
yeah, exactly. And then I come bouncing back, who knew? So about 3 months ago, I put a question up, and it was basically questions that I ask a CEO before I'll take a CTO role. So I've been around the block. I've had a few, C-suite technology roles. And, at that level, it's always a two-way street. You're always checking out the company, right? You're not like, oh, thanks for giving me a job. I know the job market can be a bit desperate, but actually you still want to know that you're going to fit in, you're going to be able to do it, they're going to use the value of you and stuff like that, right? So basically, I put up a post that said, right, here's the things that I ask of a CEO before I would accept a job that they might be offering me. And I got a lot of comments. And so I'm just going to quickly go through each of the questions with you, Sophie, and then you give me your
Mm,
view on why you think that maybe matters, whether it's
yeah,
important to you. And, given you're coming from a product world, but you join companies, you join startups as well as scale ups. So it might mean different. So just give me your opinions on this, and we can always look at some of the comments. So
fab. Yeah.
the first thing I said, the first question was, what's the biggest challenge for the company right now? So what was behind this, right? Basically, I'm trying to understand where the company is and whether they're just bringing in, a technology leader because it's like well, we need a technology leader, or whether it's like, it's core to their mission and stuff like that. So, but often you get a little bit of like, sorry, I'm recruiting you. Why are you asking me what my challenges are, right? So things, but I think that's a really important one. How does that work for you?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting question. I mean, from the product perspective, and obviously there's a huge amount of overlap between, product and technology, and depending on the size of your organization, it could well be exactly the same thing. I've definitely sat in interviews where I've said, well, why are you, if you're the first product person coming in, why are you hiring a product person? Why are you investing in this team, assuming you're not just replacing someone who was there before? And they go, oh, well, I mean, that's just what you do when you get to this size. You bring in a product person, you kind of wheel them out because that's how it's done. And often, my response to that will be, okay, but what is the challenge? What is, what are you seeing that isn't where you want it to be, that is leading you to make this move, right? And I think often what I hear is, well, we just want to grow, we kind of want to do better, and there can be a lot of confusion. So I think for me, knowing at that stage of an interview, either you don't know what the challenge is, great, we're going to spend a lot longer in this interview trying to kind of unravel what's going on in the business, or you do know what it is, fantastic, let's move, or fantastic, that doesn't sound like a challenge that I'm best placed to help with, but let's kind of continue the conversation and see where it goes.
You've hit
So
two
yeah,
key points there, Sophie, right? Two really
yeah,
key important points. One is if they can't articulate the challenge, that just makes you think, do these guys know what's going on in their company, sort of thing? So that's if they can roll it off the cuff and go, right, well, I've got problems, then that's really good, yeah. And then I think the second point you're making is like whether you're the right person. That's the two-way
yeah,
street I'm talking about. They might be able to articulate their challenge, and then you go, "Oh, that's that. I can't really. Yeah, that's not going to be me,"
yeah,
sort of thing, right? And then it becomes an honest conversation, and everybody wins, right?
exactly.
All right. So next question I ask after that, if I'm still in the room at this point, is how do you see the role of technology in your business, right? And I always think this is a really revealing answer. Do they see it as a cost center to be managed? Is it a useful enabler to the business, but just quietly in the background? Or is it a driver of future growth and competitive advantage, right? Now, I'm going to caveat this with none of those answers necessarily matter as long as you know the answer to it and it suits you. Some people are IT managers, right? And they just want to go in, manage the cost center efficiently, deliver a quiet service, no problem. They don't want the limelight, all that kind of stuff. An organization need that, right? I'm in a CIO. One of my fractional roles at the minute is a CIO role. The CEO told me on day one, you're an enabler for the stuff the business is doing. It's a manufacturing business. It's not a digital technology business. They've got huge technology challenges and concerns to enable it. So it's a good, interesting role from that point of view. But it was very clear you're an enabler, you're not the thing. And that was like, fine, I get it. And I could go in on that basis, right? So I think this helps set the context for what you might be able to do. How do you look at that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think there's, for me, there's almost a triangulation between, what are you hearing in terms of how do they see the role of technology? What do you want to be yourself in that role? Do you want to be, an enabler? Do you want to be really driving the business forward? But also, how does that reconcile with the business, what it's doing, the landscape that it sits in, that kind of broader context. I would always be interested and nervous to sit in a conversation where looking at the landscape, there's a real opportunity for technology to be a driving force of the company. But actually, the CEO sees it as an enabling function. It's not something to invest in. Or vice versa, you've got a CEO who's really pushing for technology to kind of bring the business forward. But actually that, it doesn't really reconcile with the model of the business or the sector that it's in. So for me, it's the triangulation between those three things. Do they feel like they are really kind of resonating together?
I think that's spot on. Which brings us to the third point, and this one actually was the most commented on question from the post that I did, and everybody was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah." But it almost feels like the most embarrassing one to ask, which is, how does your exec team operate together? How does your exec team
Mm.
work together? And again, you're this person applying to come into this company, and you're going, "So the C-suite, how's it going?" Right? Are you all a bunch of
Mm.
idiots? Do you all argue all the time? Are you high performing? Have you all read the book Five Dysfunctions of a Team? Sort of thing. Or, yeah, blah blah blah. And I get some looks with this one, right? But actually, again, somebody once described me as, you're a person who likes to run towards the fire, and I was like, am I? Oh, yeah, maybe. Sometimes when they say, look, to be honest, we're clever in our own domains, but we're a bit of a shit show, right? There's a bit of me that's attracted to that. My coaching side comes out. I've been on a lot of good and bad executive teams, and I'm like, oh, maybe I could help here. Maybe there's something broader than just being the tech guy. But sometimes you want to hear, we got it going on. We know we know where we're at. We've got this. And also the other thing is, often I'm looking for them to say, well, why don't you meet them, right? I
Mm.
don't just want to meet the CEO before I take a CTO, CIO role, right? I want to meet some other people. I want to check out who they are, how they feel about technology.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think they always say that, the things you commit to most with the minimum exposure is, renting or buying a house. You walk around a couple of times and then you live there for multiple years. It's massive. And then the same with a job. You might have a handful of interviews and you sort of try to meet people, but they want to bring someone in, and then you're committed to something for, 8 to 10 hours a day, if you're lucky, for, a whole number of years. So definitely kind of pushing to meet the team and understand that dynamic, and really hoping to see that there's an awareness. And as you say, everyone says they've read the five dysfunctions and they can list them, but do they truly know how they sort of interact, what the theory is, and how that applies to that team in particular? We spend a lot of time talking about strategy versus execution, and I'm always floored by, it doesn't feel like execution should play as big of a role as it does, but it really, really does. So while you can walk in and you can look at everything on paper and say, yeah, this is fantastic, really understand where you're going, really resonates with me, having an understanding of who are the personalities, how do they work together, how aware are they, is going to be absolutely massive in, how comfortable you'll be in that position, and how much impact you can have in your role.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. And understanding how they all think about their performance also is a really useful
Yeah.
kind of dynamic as well to understand. Like I say, that was the one where it got a most attention on my post, where people really sort of felt that was really important, but also quite challenging to get people to talk about
Mm.
that, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah, I think there's a real art of this kind of genuine curiosity. It's very easy, going into that interview to say, well, I have to assume that you guys are all working together terribly because that's my safest starting point, and then I'll build up to, like, fantastic, you know what you're doing. But if that is kind of genuinely what you're holding in mind, asking a neutral question that sounds curious is really, really difficult. You'll slip up and say, you'll use an adjective that's harsher than it should be. So I think there's a lot of kind of personal, psychological, as you say, coaching work to get to a point where you really have that genuine, open curiosity about how is this team working together, with no assumptions and no fear about how they might actually be working together, so that, as you say, you don't accidentally offend someone when you ultimately might want to work alongside them.
Yeah, I no, I completely agree with that. I completely agree, and you just got to feel your way through that. Sometimes there's not enough time in the interview process. That we
Mm.
all moan when we're hiring people. Oh God, it was a 28 interview process. I had to meet the HR's auntie, and, go around for dinner. And, we get all of that kind of stuff. But you're right, it's a big decision. And actually, the more senior the role, the bigger the responsibility generally. So I think you should get into that and invest in time. Which brings us to the fourth and final question that I think that's important. Although go and check out the post. We'll put it in the links afterwards, because there were other people who added in their own questions, and that was really useful as well. But the final question is, what do you want from me? Right? What do you want me to do? Not what do you want technology to deliver for you, but what do you want me to do? And, there's a variety of questions. It could be, I just want you to come in and take away this thing that I don't understand over here. It's causing me pain. People keep asking me about cyber security, something or other. Blah, 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 blah. Just deal with that sort of thing. That, again, people can do that. Feels a bit uninspiring. If somebody
Mm.
says, I want you to join us in the C-suite and lead the company forward to discover new countries and worlds, that's like pretty inspiring stuff, right? One of the most common ones I get, and they don't say this, but this is what I hear is, well, we want you to bring your cloak and wear your underpants on the outside of your trousers and basically be a superhero, right? You are the superhero that will fix all known ills. And they're the ones I run away from. Now, which might surprise you, right? Because everybody knows I'm a big head and think I'm great. So, it might surprise you that but you're being set up to fail. You can be great at what you do, but if they think you're a panacea for all ills and they don't have to pay attention, they don't have to engage with you, doesn't matter whether your team's useless or not, doesn't matter whether they're giving you enough budget or not. If those things aren't dealt with, you are going to fail. Doesn't matter whether you're Clark Kent or not.
Yeah, I now have an image burned into my retinas of you sort of showing up day one, going, I'm here and you've got your underpants on the outside. I won't ask you what kind of underpants you wear. No, I think
I'll send you a picture of that scene later on.
Perfect. We'll stick it in the show notes as well. And yeah, I think it's really interesting, and I think there's probably an aspect in there, and I'd be interested to hear if this is translated in your experience, or if we got this in the comments on the post as well. As do you get a sense of tactical versus strategic with this question? If you say, what do you need from me? And the answer you get is something that's going to happen in week 1, month 1 versus something that's going to happen across the next 10 years. That's got to be a really, really useful kind of landing point to understand, where is the focus? What are the horizons that this organization or the CEO is typically focusing on when it comes to technology?
Yeah. So it is important to find those things out, and it is that two-way street, and you do. So form up your questions would be my advice to those people going into those senior interviews. Do a bit of research about the company, do a bit of research on the individuals. LinkedIn's a powerful process for doing that. Go and ask some challenging questions yourself. But it's important to understand that, and I don't know, maybe you have to be a bit brave to ask some of those questions, but it's your career. That's the point, Sophie, right? You
Yeah.
probably only get a few shots at this, so make them count, right?
Absolutely. Great advice. And I think something you've touched on already is, going into an interview or going into an application process, having a sense of what answers will make you run for the hills and what answers will make you kind of run towards the organization before you get them. Because, you sort of sit there and you go, I really like this company. The team's fantastic. They said something that, really scared me, but the team is fantastic. So I'm going to, I'll ignore that red flag. So setting yourself up for success to really engage with this full spectrum of answers that you might get, not be swayed by a really lovely office or something silly like that is
Yeah,
got to be helpful
yeah.
too.
Well, I'm hoping that all this advice that we're giving out is helping those people on their career journey, our listeners, to decide what's important to them and what they want. It'll be really interesting. Maybe we'll get some feedback on that, some questions from our audience as we go forward. All right, so welcome back to the CTO Lens. We continue with an introduction of a new segment called the mid-episode game. It's going to be a weekly quiz, and you can see that we have Luke Wild, the Games Master. He's wanted to have a job title of Games Master for years, and he's finally fulfilled that dream. Luke, what are you going to do? How are Sophie and I going to be humiliated?
Well, hello everyone. Delighted to be here. And yes, this is my one shot at my moment in the spotlight. So yeah, hopefully I manage to do as good a job as these guys. But each week I'll be popping on with a various games. Think Anton Deck Saturday Night Takeaway, and I'll be putting our leaders to the test and testing their knowledge with a variety of games. But today, guys, we're going to be playing.
Higher or lower?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a statement. It will relate to tech, and I need you to tell me if it's higher or lower. We'll be keeping a weekly scoreboard. We'll flash it up on the screen once we get a few more weeks under the belt, and we'll be playing for a very big prize at the end of this season. So yeah, keep your wits about you. Cool. So welcome to Higher or Lower, Sophie and David. We have 5 questions to answer. And if you decide to get exactly the same amount of points at the end of the game, I also have a tiebreaker. So I have come prepared. Okay. So the first question is, all I need is higher or lower from either of you. Recently, Virgin Media were fined for leaving customers at vulnerable harm due to a digital switchover. Was that number higher or lower than £20 million?
Can we ask follow-up questions? No, just higher
No.
or lower?
Yes, higher or lower, please.
Higher. It's got to be higher.
Okay, David?
It was higher. It was 39.8 million.
You are both correct, but unfortunately, David, it was only 24 million.
I'd have
Can you
made it
take away a
38.7
point?
million.
He was too
Oh,
try
what, for
hard by
being a
giving the
smart
actual
half,
number.
Sophie? Is that it?
Yeah.
If we say anything with confidence, people will believe.
Well, fortunately, you
Except for
both
this.
got 1 point, but we must move on. This is a quick fire segment. So in 2017, BT encountered a similar fine for delaying installation of high-speed lines. Was this fine higher or lower than the recent Virgin hiccup? So was it higher or lower than 24 million, not 39.8 that David is coming up with? Sophie, it looks like you're Googling.
No, I'm not. I'm looking at my tea for wisdom. I'm going to say lower because
You're reading the
inflation. I
leaves.
don't know.
Did you say lower?
The leaves said lower. Yes.
And David?
Higher.
The correct answer was higher. It was 42 million.
Well done,
Well,
David.
So 2-1 to David.
I
as
think
we
it was
stand.
my fault. I was working at BT then. I think it was my fault.
Well, you know what they
Oh,
say.
insider knowledge.
Yeah.
Third question. It was ChatGPT's anniversary. We saw the birthday party that we threw for it earlier. How many weekly users does it claim to have? Is it higher or lower than 42 million?
I'm going to say higher.
Weekly users, 42 million.
It is a lot.
Yeah, no,
I think higher.
I'm going higher.
You are both correct. But does anyone want to have a guess at the number?
I'm going to
60.
I'm going to go 1.2 billion.
800
Oh,
million.
wow.
So you weren't too far away. 800 million users per week are using ChatGPT as of last week's article.
It'll be
Wild.
1.2 billion after people sort of run our podcast.
By
so
the
they
time
can
the podcast
ask
goes
more
live.
questions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Cool. Question number 4. Recent M&S cyber attack made headline news across the country. Was the estimated cost of the outage higher or lower than 800 million? So that's the recent one in the summer.
I'm going lower.
Yeah, I'm going to go higher just so that we split the scores a little bit.
It was lower. It was 324 million at the last report.
I mean, still a pain, right? Still a pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, it still hurts. Still hurts significantly.
And the
So what does that
consumer will
make?
still pay. So,
3-2 to David?
yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
We've got 3-2? Yeah, okay, keep going.
Okay, this is to tie it up, Sophie. So we need you to get back in the game here because I've got a great tiebreaker. Right.
Okay.
There was a similar recent event with AWS in late October. Was the financial impact estimated at its lowest higher or lower than £324 million per week?
Per week.
Per week, that's a lot. I'm going to optimistically say lower because that's a pretty big chunk of change.
I'm going higher.
The answer was at its lowest, it would estimate $75 million a week. So Sophie ties it up to 3-3, which means
There you go.
it's time
there
for
you go.
Tiebreaker.
which also is non-tech related. So it should. Yeah. We tried it out in the office earlier, and I tell you what, it was a good one. What
All right.
percentage of the world's population lives in the Northern Hemisphere? And the trick on the tiebreaker to make sure that we get a winner, we're looking for the closest percentage number to the answer.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
I know
I'll let
nothing
you go
about
first
geography.
on this, Sophie.
That's very generous of you. I'll try and benchmark you to a completely incorrect number and then we both look like idiots. Okay.
Nice.
So the Northern Hemisphere, is there time to do a back and look? Do you want like a quick fire?
I think that was the point.
57.
David? Don't say
Well,
1% more, otherwise you get minus points.
I saw 10 people when I was in South Africa. That's my only reference of the Southern Hemisphere. So I'm going to go 72%.
And this week's winner is David. The answer was 90% of the world's population live in the Northern.
90%?
90%.
That's not true.
How can that be true?
That's not true. What? How?
We have a judicial inquiry here. Look.
Challenge. Can I Google it?
That's what Google told me earlier. So therefore it's true.
People Did you ask
I mean,
ChatGPT and it hallucinated?
No,
it
it
just,
was
you
you.
can't. This is a quiz. The quiz master is always right. I've won, Sophie. Back down. Back down.
What? How is that true? Yeah, I'm getting the same, well, from Gemini, but what?
I think that's
Wild.
also 1-0 to the games master for
Well,
doing his
thank you, Luke, particularly as I won this week. As you say, we'll be having a scoreboard, so we'll see. Tune in for another week to see whether Sophie trumps me. I dare say she'll be doing a lot more research over the coming weeks to make sure that she completely beats me. But you know, this week I'm one ahead. Okay, so thanks very much for that quiz of the week. We'll do that something like that every week for a bit of fun. But now we're going to do a little bit of an agony aunt corner. We're going to do the disaster diary. So this is a new bit where we're getting our listeners send in their own thoughts, their own disasters, something that maybe has gone completely wrong for them, or a challenge that they've had. Sophie, you've got one here that a reader sent in, a listener sent in. Perhaps you can read it out to us.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to. So, dear David, I walked into the boardroom recently armed with a detailed AI strategy, models, risks, timelines, and expected ROI. I was ready for tough questions. What I wasn't ready for was the board's complete lack of knowledge around AI. I think this is something we've heard before. Their opinions and understanding didn't go much further than occasionally using ChatGPT, but expected the business to be using AI to maximize efficiency, in quotes. Then our CEO asked, dead serious, whether we could train the AI faster by just giving it more coffee. I think this was not serious. I think the CEO has a quirky sense of humor. For the next 20 minutes, I found myself translating machine learning into layman's terms, trying to explain the importance of AI, but also manage the expectations that we will have a perfect solution straight away. So my question, this person's question for you and me, David, how do you lead when you're the expert and the people in charge have no idea what AI actually means? David, what do you think about this one? Kick us off.
Okay, so first of all, replace the word AI with any piece of technology understanding in the last 50 years, right? And what you have to do, and I'm being a bit funny and flippant here, but you have to assume that non-technical people will not understand the impact, the implications, the benefit, the risks of any of these technologies. AI is just the latest Johnny-come-lately in this area. The slight difference, and I think the reason we've got this question, Sophie, is that everybody's heard of AI, right? Because of the sort of big outer world success beyond technology of Chat GPT and Gemini and Copilot and all. It's up in people's faces. Everybody's got, and now everybody's a blooming expert, right? So I think even my mum is asking me about AI stuff, right? So I think so, you know, suddenly we've been thrust into this world where people were quite happy to be ignorant about databases and code and, you know, all of those kind of complex worlds where us technologists were like, yeah, it's all right, we got it, we'll explain it to you with a simple analogy. Now they're like, no, I understand what AI is. I'm an expert. I use it every day. And it's like, what, to write your emails for you? Great. Now you really understand what AI is, right? So I think that's the challenge here, is that there's more people who think they know about it, right? So it's interesting that this listener is saying, you know, they didn't know what it was. Actually, I suspect they did think they knew what it was, and that's why stupid questions are coming like, can we just make it go faster with coffee? Yeah. I think what this deserves is a little bit of sympathy, right? You know, we talked earlier on about, you know, playing with the C-suite, making sure that you're part of that team and helping everybody, not just, you know, being a tech whatever. And I think that plays here. I think, you know, the user says, I found myself translating machine learning into layman's terms. I love an analogy. Anybody who's worked with me knows that I love an analogy. Dumb it down, get it down into something that you can really get people fired up about, really get them engaged on, and answer questions about why you can't just feed it coffee and it will go faster. So I think, yeah, don't worry about the AI bit of this so much. Just understand everybody thinks they know what it is. Dumb it down, few analogies, get them on the same page as you. That's my approach to this.
I totally agree with you. I love an analogy as well. And I didn't realize I was so overdoing it till I left a role and my farewell card was full of the analogy queen, we'll miss your analogies. But I think they're so powerful, right? Because this technology it's wildly complicated. There's a number of people who understand, you know, machine learning, AI, all the way to its core. I'm not one of those people. I imagine you're not, but kind of being able to communicate the slightly, you know, the more relevant aspects is so important, but so difficult. So yes, absolutely using analogies. I think for me, there's definitely a second piece, having absolutely been in this position of trust, because, that education is something that absolutely takes time. These are really kind of complicated concepts. You only get so much time in a room with your C-suite or with your CEO to be able to explain something fully, let it digest, really let it sit in. It's going to take a little while. So being able to hopefully already have, but if not, if you're coming into a new role, start to build that trust of, okay, I'll educate you. We're all going to get on the same page, but actually we can't necessarily educate all the way down. So trust me and trust my expertise, and have that confidence that if I say we can't give it coffee, I can explain it to you until the cows come home. If it's difficult to translate, trust me that we can't give it coffee. So I think, for me, this kind of multi-pronged approach, educating, using analogies, building trust, and expecting some painful moments where you sit there and go, gosh, I feel like we're not on the same page, but having that ambition to work together to get on the same page is really, really important. And being able to, bring your own humility and create humility in that conversation where, as you say, people will say, well, no, I've been using ChatGPT and it knows all of these things about me, and it's been kind of thinking in this way, kind of being able to say, well, it doesn't know all of these things. Do you remember the time it kind of got something wrong? Great. Let's create that humility in the boardroom, and use that to, kind of really collaborate in how we think more, in a more nuanced way about how we can use these technologies.
I think that's spot on, Sophie, right? I think that, you use words like collaborate there, work as a team, et cetera, et cetera. And I think there's two things about that, right? So as technology leaders, as technology experts, I used to have a boss and he said, look, we've got all the data and we've got the smarts. We have to help everyone else, right? They're disadvantaged because, they don't understand computers. We do, and we've got all the data to back up all of our opinions, right? And so from that point of view, I think that there is a bit of empathy here. We do need to be able to say, right, I'm going to put in the effort here to make sure I can get everybody on the same page, as you were saying, right? So I think there's that. But the collaboration side, the flip side of that is, I want a board who lean in, right? I want a board who take the time to understand. I am so over CEOs, CFOs, COOs going, yeah, I'm not technical. It's just it's just this, like, don't talk to me about anything. I'm not technical, and I just challenge that all the time. I just say, what, you don't use online banking? And they're like, oh yeah, of course I use online banking. And you've never used Netflix? Yeah, of course I use Netflix. Then you're technical. You're using technical. You know what buttons to press and what. So let's meet in the middle. That would be my advice here, right? Let's be empathetic about, bringing it to a common understanding, using analogies, patience, all that kind of stuff. But also, these non-technical people out there, you're in the C-suite, learn a bit, listen a bit, turn up with humility, ask intelligent questions. And us technologists, we love to share, right? We'll help you get to that level of understanding. So hopefully that will allow our listener to go with confidence and talk about their AI strategy and bring the board on the journey with them. I really hope that works. We're going to have to wrap up, Sophie. We've been so busy talking here. We're going to have to move on. Let's just have a quick recap on what we've done. So we've introduced a new format. A lovely Sophie has joined. You're going to be seeing her again every week. We're going to do this. We're going to go through and talk about what's going on in the news. We're going to focus in on a subject, probably some random post that I've done, which caused a lot of controversy. We like that. Sophie might start randomly posting soon, and then we'll talk about her random posts as well. It's not all about me. Although I do like to monologue. We established that right at the start.
Yeah.
So, and then Luke's going to come along and get us a game. And in between, we're going to slot in an expert in the industry, a technology lead, or maybe not a technology. We might get a recruiter in to tell us about how to recruit in technology. We might get all sorts of other people in. We might get one of these CEOs one day and ask them what they really think about technologists, right? That'd be great. We're going to get those people in. We want you to send us your disaster diaries. Dear Sophie, dear Dave, right? What is it you want to know? We'll give you our opinion. You can see that we're clear on that. And any quiz ideas you might have, because Luke is sure going to run out of quiz ideas very quickly, right? That is it. Thank you for joining us for the second series of the CTO Lens. And I'd just like to finish by thanking my new co-host, Sophie. And Sophie, why don't you give us a few words to take us out?
Well, thank you, David. I've had a fantastic time. I'm heartbroken that I lost at the quiz, but there is always next week. So thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you have enjoyed the podcast, do make sure to like us, follow, subscribe, comment wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on LinkedIn to find out more about new podcast releases and our events. It really is your support that allows us to keep going. So, if you like it, make sure you click those buttons.
See you next week, everyone.